Pete Buttigieg is turning his focus out west today, making 4 stops in California for his first public events since that second-place finish in New Hampshire this week. Why California? West Coast, best coast, obviously, but probably also because that state is key to Super Tuesday with the most number of delegates in the country. Buttigieg's western swing comes as some allies of President Trump are starting to swing their attention to the former mayor, not talking about his policies or his platform, but talking about the fact that he's gay. The Washington Post is calling it a possible sign of things to come, as some conservatives and the president himself talk about whether Americans are ready to elect a gay president.
They've got to be saying, despite all the great ground that's been covered, America's still not ready to elect a gay guy kissing his husband on the debate stage president.
What Limbaugh was talking about, and again, the way he said it is different than I would obviously say it. He's saying there are Democrats that are sitting there worried that this is going to be a bigger issue.
Would Americans vote for a gay man to be president?
I think so. I think there would be some that wouldn't, and, I wouldn't be among that group, to be honest with you.
So we're going to break that down in a second because there are some interesting numbers on that piece of it. But I want to bring in NBC News road warrior Vaughn Hilliard, who's with the Buttigieg campaign in California. Also with us, Washington Post political reporter Eugene Scott, who is writing about this today. Vaughn, let me start with you. Talk about what we can expect for Buttigieg's return to the campaign trail here.
Yeah, good morning, Hallie. This is it. He's on the West Coast, and he's not returning to the East Coast, at least per his schedule at this point, until after the Nevada caucus a week from Saturday. He is in California today. He'll be in the greater Bay Area for 2 fundraisers before heading up here to Sacramento for a public campaign event. For Pete Buttigieg, this is go time. Over the course of the last year, he has faced persistent questions over whether he would be able to expand his reach of support, particularly communities of color. Well, this is it. Between Nevada and California, you're looking at very similar demographics. About the Democratic voting population is about half white, but then you've got about a quarter percentage of that Democratic electorate that are also Latino voters. You also have Asian American. You have an African American population here. So this is his opportunity. The big question here in California, Hallie, frankly, when you're talking to folks on the ground, is they haven't seen Pete Buttigieg on the airwaves. He has not been on the TV airwaves here. You have the likes of Tom Steyer. You have the likes of Michael Bloomberg. But for this campaign, they're going to be making these campaign stops. But for California, over the course of these next 18 days, there's a lot of question marks. We should note there is a change in election law here where folks can now show up on March 3rd and change their party registration. So you saw this in Iowa and New Hampshire. Buttigieg benefit from some of these more moderates or even disaffected conservatives coming to the polls. The Buttigieg campaign hopes that they're able to do that here in California come March 3rd.
Vaughn Hilliard out west for the week. Vaughn, thank you much. Eugene, let me bring you in here because there's the question, right, is are Americans ready to vote for a gay president? The answer seems to be yes when you look at the numbers. This new Gallup poll this year found that 78% of Americans, the vast majority of them, would vote for a gay or lesbian candidate. Why do you think this is even still a question here?
Well, I think it's still a question because we have had some polling suggesting that there are members of the Democratic Party, specifically black voters, who are uncomfortable with the presidential candidate's sexuality. But it's moved the conversation beyond just black voters. We saw that incident in Iowa where a woman was going to caucus for Buttigieg and said she did not even know that he was gay, and that was something that made her want to change her vote. But also after Buttigieg's performances in Iowa and New Hampshire, conservative media, and specifically the media that's targeted towards evangelical Christians, have come out with multiple pieces trying to let their readers know where Buttigieg stands on LGBT issues, in part because Buttigieg's success, especially in Iowa, was because of some more moderate and even Christian voters who are, dissatisfied with President Trump's morality and are looking for another option.
Your colleagues at the Post write about how this episode with Limbaugh is basically a window into what Buttigieg could face if he ends up becoming the Democratic nominee, pointing out that Buttigieg did not publicly address Limbaugh's remarks. His surrogates and supporters did, right? They pushed back. But it does seem that the Buttigieg campaign has decided that their candidate is just going to take the high road here and not get down into the mud with this kind of discussion. Is that your sense?
I certainly think that's the case. I mean, we know Buttigieg performed as well as he did in part because of the issues he talks about and his ability to connect with voters on the topics that concern them most. He hasn't run as the gay candidate, which is in part probably why there are some people who missed it somehow. And so he's trying to draw attention away from this identity piece that his critics are trying to weaponize against him and focus on the things that he believes helped him become as successful as he did, perform, should I say, in New Hampshire and Iowa.
And just a quick step back for a moment, because Tim Miller, who's a friend of this show, who's been off and on, has pointed out we shouldn't be overlooking how unreal it is that a married, openly gay man leads the delegate race for a major party 2 cycles after both parties' nominees oppose gay marriage. This is, we are coming out at the end of a sea shift here, Eugene.
Absolutely. When Buttigieg made his announcement, or not announcement speech, but when he spoke in Iowa the night of the caucus and people were like, why are you claiming victory? He later communicated that he was claiming that it was victorious, that someone like him could do as well as he did, considering where America was just 3 or 5 years ago. Okay. And he's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. History was made, and it will continue to be made as long as he's in the race.
Eugene, Scott Von Hilliard, thanks to both of you for your reporting and the conversation. I appreciate it. Coming up in our next hour, Craig Melvin talks to the national co-chair of Michael Bloomberg's campaign, Mayor Steve Benjamin of Columbia, South Carolina. And speaking of the Bloomberg team, the candidate is again